Yes, so as I mentioned earlier, for those who were in the main session, I'm Principal Strategic Advisor for Internal Communications Consulting at Staffbase. What does that mean? It means that I've been in the communications industry for quite some time. I used to be the CEO of a corporate communications PR consulting firm where I specialized in internal communications as well as other areas of corporate communications. And then I also had started as part of the PR firm, my own mobile app technology company. And that's when I got to know Staffbase quite well. Really, I've been spending the past decade or so really focused on internal communications and technology. So this conversation is so ripe and I'm so excited about it. And our conversation, Lottie, been looking forward to this moment.
Ace. And Jeff and I are actually on the same team, but this is the first time that we've done a webinar together. So it's nice to kind of enter this arena with you, Jeff. And for those that haven't met me already, I am Lottie Baisley. I am a internal communications strategic advisor at Staffbase. And before I joined Staffbase, I was actually a customer of Staffbase. So my background is internal communications and employee engagement. And now I work with our customers to really gain an understanding of their business goals, their internal communication strategies, and ultimately see how we can work together to do comms better, which is my elevator pitch. So hopefully you'll all manage to join us okay. We do have a couple of questions just to kick us off. So please do comment in the chat function. Again, we'll save a little bit of time at the end for questions. So please keep your questions coming in as we go along. So our first question to you is, do you have an intranet in place? So type us a yes or a no in the comments. And once you've answered that question, then the second question is, what problems might you encounter with your intranet? So this is something when Jeff and I are speaking to clients that we come across quite often, is that a customer will come to us with all of the challenges of their intranet and say, we can't do this, we're struggling with that, how can you help us? So if you have any kind of problems with your intranet that you might be encountering, let us know what they are. So I can see there's a few yeses in there, quite a few yeses. Oh, and a no. So largely we have yes to the intranet question. And now we are starting to see that there is low engagement. So adoption and engagement, low engagement. Okay, so feels like engagement with the intranet is probably a big focus for you all. So hopefully the session today will really help to kind of boost that engagement. So you're in the right place. So ahead of jumping into the session, because we all have some statistics and I've just been on a session to talk about metrics, I want to start us off with a slide here. So here we have some findings of our very own intranet study. These are the kind of top problems that people are saying that they have within their intranet. So as you can see here, we have things like reach, so it doesn't reach everyone. There's a lack of structure, it's confusing, a lack of personalization, unappealing, unattractive design, amongst a few others. And so as we were assessing these kind of common problems that communicators were saying that they had with their intranet, we realized that there were a few themes that started to emerge here. So things like personalization, structure, design, interaction, and analytics. And without giving away any spoilers, these are the themes that you can see on the slide here. And these are the basis for our success factors. So I will now stop talking, hand over to Jeff to talk us through some of these.
Yeah, I mean, these are 5 areas that we work with our customers on a day in, day out basis. You know, what was interesting, Lottie and I were looking at the letters PSIDA, and we were trying to come up with a catchy acronym for them, and we just couldn't. So, you know, to keep this session interactive, if anyone can do something with this, help us out. We plan to give this presentation several times over. So please help us put it into the chat. Why don't I get started with the first success factor, which is personalization. You know, having worked with hundreds of companies, all sizes, across all industries over the years, helping them think about their current intranet situation. One of the things that we hear repeatedly is the fact that intranets have grown over time so much without any real coordinated purpose, and really have become, for what I think of as colloquially, dumping grounds for everything and anything. And as a result of this, when individuals who have been with a company for years, or those who are new to a company, come into the intranet for the first time, any sort of individualized user experience really doesn't exist. In thinking about your intranet, personalization is going to be a critical component both for adoption as well as engagement, since this is what is going to cause employees to not only want to engage with it, but also make for a more practical tool in which they can navigate, since it will directly speak to their individual work and needs. We like to think of personalizations in two ways. First, there's personalization that is more or less dictated by your company based on who an employee is in your organization. And then this tends to be directed by your company's HRIS system, your employee database, and how an employee is identified in the database. The other is going to be more of the opt-in personalization, where employees are given the opportunity to sign up for information, for communications, and for other content that they care about personally. What I would say to these two, neither is better or more important than the other. They both have a purpose in ensuring that your intranet provides the right amount of what I like to refer to as need-to-know information, the information that employees need to know to do their job and live their lives. And this tends to be dictated by the employee database, right? And then there's the nice to know information, the content that furthers the mission, the vision, the values of your organizations. This can be both based on an employee database, and like I mentioned before, opting in by an employee based on what they care about themselves personally. We spend a lot of time at StaffBase with our customers focusing on this topic, especially user segmentation and how essentially to slice and dice your employee database to ensure a really personalized, and I think of it as a uncluttered end user experience based on an employee's role, based on their location, employee type, and other typical ways that companies identify their employees. And you can see various categories, target groups of employees on this slide. So that gives you a few things to think about with regard to personalization, how that can really help in ensuring adoption and engagement with your intranet. To keep our session interactive, what we're hoping to do as we go through the 5 success factors is to get your thoughts on how you view the success factors as being important to the success of an intranet. So if for each one, we'll go through the same exercise. If you can give a score of 1 to 10, 1 being the least important, 10 being the most important, with respect now to personalization, that would be great. And I think, why don't we go on to the next success factor, Lottie, and then at the end, I guess we can take questions if there are any.
Yes, happy to do so. Thank you, Jeff. So next on the list then we have structure, which covers things like governance, any structural elements, and we'll also talk a little bit about methodologies today. So when we talk about the structure of your intranet and user experience, simply put, we want to make things easy for your users to find. So things need to be simple and familiar so that when they log in, they see your intranet as a trusted source of information and news, and they know exactly where they need to go to get things when they visit. So of course, the obvious place to allow people to move around your intranet is your navigation. And this would appear at the top or the side of every page and usually contains a link to get you back to the home page as well. We'll probably see some drop downs, all kind of sorted into different categories. So this menu kind of mimics most external websites, for me, like my online shopping websites or news sites. But I will come to menu in more detail in a moment. Before that, though, I think it's really important to recognize all of the ways in which we can make it easy for your users to seamlessly float their way around your platform. So this slide here, you can see a few of these different elements. Obviously, we have the navigation or the menu at the top here. Then we've got the use of a breadcrumb navigation. Love the title here. This allows your users to kind of keep track of where they are within the platform, which is especially helpful if they've gotten click happy and kind of lost track of what they clicked to end up where they are. And it also allows them to kind of go back and retrace their steps if needs be. Another really obvious one is the search function. So this allows people to search for specific content or articles or even keywords to find the content that they're after. Then we have what we call the utility navigation. So these are icons that direct users to regularly used applications like a launch pad. Or you can see up here, we have the notification center so they can see what they might have missed since they were last here. And on the pages themselves, you can see that we use what's called a shop window navigation. So this is a section where users are able to browse their options, such as key documents or link tiles to take them somewhere else. And we can also use section navigation, so something like anchor links. So if you have a really long page of information, you can allow users to jump to a specific place within the page itself and then back up to the top. But back to our navigation menu. So this is hopefully something that users will see no matter where they are in the intranet, where we have grouped common themes, topics, pages, channels together and made them super easily accessible. So this menu bar here brings kind of easier access to your content through menu flyouts, deeper navigation levels, creating that seamless navigation that we're looking for. So seems pretty simple and basic, right? You just need to create your navigation. Well, not quite so simple, as Jeff and I have come to learn over the years. So there are a few things that would be helpful to remember before you even begin to create the structure here. So firstly is that each person, of course, has their own view on the world. So what might make sense to me may not make sense to Jeff, and vice versa. So obviously bear that in mind, which means that there is no ideal structure. So please don't beat yourself up trying to create the perfect navigation. Your structure will also kind of be a living thing because it may have to adapt and change as you add and change content within your platform. And you can also use your analytics to make sure that your most well-visited pages and channels are front and center of your intranet too. That being said, you must also make sure that the navigation is robust enough that it's not changing super often or so drastically, as that, of course, would defeat the point of creating a very simple navigation in the first place. So this is where we would recommend going through something called a card sorting exercise to help you kind of group together similar topics and themes. So content clustering is where you take individual use cases, pages, news channels, etc., anything that you have within your platform, and gather them together in groups that make sense to you, such as gathering your HR topics or your news channels together. And this is an activity that you should do with a group of people, but make sure that you do this task individually so we get that range of people kind of viewing the world, as we both said. And then take a look at what groupings you have in common, talk each other through how you got there, and then use this output to ultimately create your navigation. Now, between Jeff and I, we've probably done this hundreds of times together, so we've pulled some top tips together for you. So firstly is just make sure that you're using the right tools to capture your input. So you might want to go old school and use Sharpies and sticky notes, or you might want to use a digital tool like Jamboard or Miro if you're not all together. Making sure that you have the right people with you as well. So as we said, bring as many different perspectives to the table as possible. So that might be a few people from the comms team. It might be someone from HR. It might be someone from IT, making sure that you've got those different user perspectives. And speaking of user perspectives, this is an activity that should really be done from that kind of user perspective. So try and take a step back from your admin, kind of back-end user role, that this is really just to talk about user perspective. And finally, remember that something is better than nothing at all. So please don't spend your time torturing yourself over creating this kind of perfect navigation, because we already said that doesn't exist anyway. And done is better than nothing. So yes, don't spend too much time kind of getting into the weeds of everything. So let's get your thoughts now. How important would you rate structure in an intranet's success? I'm having a look here. We had 6, 7s, 8s, a 9, a 10 even. So yes, kind of high up here. How about structure? So we've done personalization and now structure. Whilst you give that a score, I will hand back over to Jeff to talk about our third success factor.
Great interaction. So why don't we talk about this one together, Lottie? In a modern intranet, giving employees the content that they need to do their jobs and live their lives is obviously a critical component, but there really is much more to it, right? It's really an opportunity. We view it as an opportunity to engage with employees and to essentially build a workplace community. So when it comes to interaction, many think of this as consisting of some sort of two-way conversation or the ability for employees to be able to publish content for everyone to see. And some companies that we work with are not comfortable with this, and that's really okay. There are, though, ways to engage with employees through a modern intranet. And you can see here on the slide several examples of what they are. So things like fun activities, quizzes, trivia, other forms of gamification. Also allowing for interaction with specific pieces of content by way of giving a thumbs up. We don't allow for thumbs down, that's too negative. Or allowing for commenting. And then within the comments, being able for employees to be able to mention each other. And then there's, of course, allowing for public interaction, giving employees the ability to ask questions of their colleagues for work-related purposes or others, or even posting pictures on social walls, which we have seen executed upon very successfully. Lottie, what thoughts do you have to add to that?
Yeah, I think it's, and you can see that we've kind of put a funnel on this slide here, that I think it's also kind of, if interaction is not something that you've done as a business before, if it's not a part of your culture, kind of starting on the left-hand side here and then sort of building your way up to that kind of deeper interaction. I think a lot of the time, if interaction is not something that you've visited before, or it's not something that people are used to, starting on the left-hand side is a lot easier because there's much more kind of what's in it for me here. So I'm more likely to fill out a form if it means that I can have my holiday days, or I'm more likely to fill out a quiz because it means that I might win a prize. Whereas when you start to get kind of people commenting or just creating their own posts, that's the stuff that is a little more, takes a bit more effort on the user's part. So it's really nice to kind of ease your way in here if that's not something that you've done before. That being said, there's lots of different types of interaction that can all be combined into one article or one page to kind of help people, ease people into that interaction there, and really embody this no feel do method in one place to create really ultimately quite transformative communications. So for those that may not have heard of it before, the no feel do model is a model commonly used by internal communicators, which essentially means, what do we want people to know, feel, or do as a result of this communication? So combining different content formats and interaction in one place can make it a lot easier for people to feel like they want to get involved in the conversation. So we've just taken a screenshot from our demo environment over here where we have this nice example of no feel do in one place. So at the top here, you can see that we have this no content, which is the static content, information on the topic, news updates about our campaign. What do we want people to know? Then you can see we've incorporated some feel elements here. So you can see we have some opinion pieces from people within the business, information and opinions of people that you trust. And then on the right-hand side, we have this do. So this is our call to action that is right there on the page. People don't have to go anywhere else to do it. It's just literally there next to the stuff that they've just read. So this one here is a kind of vote for your favorite opinion. And I've seen these kind of mixed media formats, interactions work really well on a number of things, but I've seen them be particularly successful when it comes to things like launching new company values. Perhaps it might be a new sustainability campaign that you're running. Even with employee engagement surveys, so you can have your kind of, you said we did previous results from employee engagement surveys. You can have the survey embedded there. All sorts of different things that you're kind of encouraging people to do that interaction because you're making it so easy for them. So what do you think then? Actually seemed that the second, I can't even remember what our second pillar was, Jeff. What was our second pillar? We had personalization and structure.
Right. And then interaction.
Interaction, right. Yes. Cool. Okay, so yes.
That's why we need a good acronym, right?
Yeah, exactly. I've completely lost track of all the order now. But yes, let us know what you feel about interaction, how important that is to you. Is it something that you're doing on your platform already, something that you'd like to do more of? So next, then we move on to design, and I will hand back over to you, Jeff.
Great. Yeah. So let's talk about design. I don't know about many of you who are participating today, but I certainly was not trained as a graphic artist. I do love, just for a little fun fact about me, I'm a big museum goer. I consider myself to be somewhat of an art aficionado, but I'm definitely not an artist. I'm definitely not a graphic designer. But the good news is that with regard to intranets, you don't have to really be an artist to be able to create an amazing and a really beautiful end user experience for your employees. In fact, I believe that given the many years that I've worked in communications, this has really set me up well to be able to advise our clients on how to design a successful intranet. So what do I mean by that? There are a few things that we at StaffBase think about and advise our clients with regard to the aesthetic part of an intranet. Before we get into colors and fonts, let's focus on the content, as Lottie mentioned earlier. This is really going to be the crux of a well-designed intranet. As Lottie mentioned, organizing content into large categories or clusters, making sure that these clusters, these categories of content are ones that are going to be familiar to your employees so that when they enter the intranet, they know where to look for their information and content. And then once we've defined the clusters, prioritizing them based on what a typical employee would consider the most important. And from there, we're then able to design a homepage with an appropriate navigation, as well as the content into pages that are simple, that are clean, and easy to navigate. You can see from this slide, also be consistent in developing templates for content to live in throughout the intranet site. From a design, from an aesthetic perspective, it's all about what I like to think of as three very fundamental intranet design principles. The first is simplicity, familiarity, and ease of use, ease of navigation. So yes, design, color, pictures on your intranet's homepage are important, but really it's about the content, how it's organized, and what is going to make for your intranet being well designed. Another thing to think about is branding. As Frank mentioned, he talked about the Edelman Trust Barometer report. One of the key takeaways is that 77%, I think that was the number Frank used. If not, we have to get our facts straight. But a large percentage of employees trust their employers more than anyone else. So what does this mean for designing your intranet? What it means is having your company's brand front and center throughout your intranet is really going to be critical to its design, effectiveness, and of course, engagement. And then you can see here on this slide, we're showing you a mobile device rather than a desktop computer screen. And the reason for this, again, Frank touched on this during his opening remarks, is that at StaffBase, we don't really differentiate between the two when it comes to intranets. The content and the ability for an employee to easily be able to access the content should be the same regardless of the device or the channel that they prefer to consume their content. That being said, with regard to mobile intranets or mobile employee apps, being able to showcase your company's brand and logo is going to be critical to the adoption of it. Employees trust their employers the most. So when you go out to ask them to download a company branded app to their personal mobile device as compared to some generic app, this is going to make a significant difference when it comes to them being willing to do so, and also to your key metric of adoption. One last thought on design, and having worked in communications and technology for so many years, one of the things that I consult with our clients on is the opportunity that exists in launching a new intranet with regards to employee engagement. I like to think of the launch of a new intranet or an employee app really as an employee engagement strategy in and of itself. So what's my point? My point is, have fun with it. Come up with a fun name for your app, for your intranet, something that's going to be engaging and also something that employees can rally around. So those are some thoughts to think about when it comes to design, successful intranets, adoption, one of the major concerns. Love to hear, again, for our fourth success factor, how you view design in the scheme of what it takes to make for a successful intranet.
Yes.
Great. So while you do that, I'll turn it over back to you, Lottie.
Thanks, Jeff. I was just going to say, if anyone has any hilarious or innovative intranet names, that's like one of my favorite parts of my job here, is like looking at the branding and what we're going to call things. And puns are always very welcome around here. So please let us know also if you have a cool intranet name or a brand or a mascot. We'd love to hear about it. So moving on to our final success factor. Now I've learned to count how many there are and what order we're in. This is analytics. So last but by no means least is making sure that you really are paying attention to your analytics. I will be giving you a real whistle-stop tour here, as we also ran a measurement session just before this earlier today with David, which you can watch back to get into some of the detail. But firstly, it's really worth recognizing that there are 1,000,001 things that you could choose to measure, but it's really about finding out what is important to you, to your team, to your business, to your senior leaders. So generally the things that we see you kind of measure fall into these sorts of three categories. Each will have their own goals, their own impacts, their own KPIs, probably their own owners. So at the bottom here, you can see that we have platform and or channel measurement. So this is really when we're talking about what channels are we using? Do we have an intranet? Are we using an app? Is it an email newsletter that we're sending out to people? So when we're talking about platform and channel measurement, what we're really looking at is how successful is the way that you're communicating with people? How successful are the platforms that you're using to reach your people? On the next level up, then we have content management. So this really is how effective are the things that you're communicating to people at an individual article level, or how many visits are your pages getting? And then lastly, we have this kind of how well are you doing strategic communication? So taking a step back and thinking about larger campaigns. So how well are you communicating your new company strategy, for example? So this isn't something that's like to be one post, or at least if you want buy-in, it shouldn't be one post. So this is where we think about campaigns. So what do we have going on that kind of aligns to this strategy? So it might be, as I say, launching your new company goals, your new company mission. It could be a new sustainability campaign. And also worth noting that probably when you're measuring the strategic success, oh my gosh, this is impossible, strategic success of your campaigns, likelihood is that you will be measuring this outside of your platform. So you're not going to be going into your channels necessarily here. So this might be something that you measure in your employee survey, for example. So last question of the day then, how important do you see analytics in being a success factor for your intranet? And maybe add in the chat what other sorts of things that you see important to measure as well. So we are nearly at the end of the session. Jeff, have you seen any questions come in that we might need to answer?
I was scrolling through and I didn't see a lot of great comments, though. Some cool names I saw. Grapevine, love that. Produce
Grapevine.
company,
nice.
So smart, so smart. The company's name is, I don't know how to pronounce this, BEDE, BEDE, in their intranet is Wikipedia.
Wikipedia.
Wow, that's a good one.
So good.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. Yeah, so questions, any thoughts about the 5 success factors, having worked with companies, throughout the entire process of concepting, designing, launching their intranets. These are things that come up time and time again. So if you have any questions, certainly throw them into the comment chat box. If not,
otherwise, I wonder, a challenge maybe for people is, do they think that there are any success factors that we may have missed off here? Have we got the 5? Are there any things else extra that we might be needing to look at in the future? I clearly forgot entirely how many success factors there were, so maybe there are some more out there that I've subconsciously forgotten about. Let us know if there are any that you think we may have missed.
We did just get a question though, which is a really good one. So why don't I read it, and Lottie, feel free to respond. So the question is, can you talk about video? Nope, no, there are tons coming in now. How often would you do a big design revamp? It's a good question.
Yeah, great question. And I think it's one of those ones that, again, it's kind of $1 million question, $1 million answer. It will obviously depend on, your business, what you've got going on. So a lot of the time we see large revamps in intranets in terms of like branding and things. If a company is going through an M&A, or they're just looking to kind of refresh things, or they have changed their external branding. When it comes to kind of revamping content, I think hopefully it's something that people are maybe kind of keeping their eyes on, hopefully more often than you need to do a big revamp. So, making sure that you're regularly kind of checking your content to make sure that it's relevant, it's the right content, the right people have the access to the right things. But if we're talking about big revamp designs, I think the rules maybe are similar to what I mentioned about kind of menu and navigation, is that, of course, we want to be keeping things super fresh, super up to date. But we don't want to be changing things in such a big way so often that people come in and they have a different experience every single time they come into the intranet, particularly for those people that might not be doing it so often. So yeah, as I say, long answer to a short question. There's no kind of right or wrong answer, but a few different things to factor in there.
Right. And I mean, it is change, right? Every time you change something, that requires some sort of change management. So we want to be sensitive to that. People ordinarily don't love change. So if you're going to do a revamp, try and keep it somewhat familiar to what you had before. Let's see, there are a lot of questions coming in now. We might have to take some of these offline, Lottie.
That is good news. I actually just saw one from Renee here to say, can you talk a bit about how to drive adoption? And Renee, I'm not sure if you were at the session before, but there's a slide that I showed in the measurement session that talks about different kind of things that you might be able to measure, and then some top tips for increasing each one. So it might be worth going back to revisit that session. I know I'm plugging my own talk track here, but yeah, it might be worth revisiting that one because there's some kind of very specific points in that.
And I might just add to that when thinking about adoption, there's 2 components as I like to think of it. One is, what is the communication surrounding the intranet and the value behind your intranet? How are you communicating that to everyone? How frequently are you communicating that to everyone?